Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, as a Vietnam-era veteran, person who served in the Army, owner of pistols, shotguns, crossbows, rifles, I stand before you, and I'm a firm defender of the Second Amendment. And I think it's lasted pretty well and served us well for all these centuries. But what we're talking about here is basically what strict scrutiny means. And Senator Quirmbach gave an example. And yes, it was over the top, but does that strict scrutiny put it over the top? So my experience in the legislature has taught me this: words matter, and the words that you put into law can be interpreted different than what legislators think. Back in the late 90s, there was a bill dealing with enterprise zones in the Iowa House, and it created an incentive for businesses who located in an enterprise zone to get extra incentives. But at the same time, the question was in committee, and I asked it, what does it mean for a business that's outside the enterprise zone, that moves into the enterprise zone, and thereby creates a depressed area outside? Is that what your intent is? And what about the businesses that are outside the enterprise zone that are doing the same thing? Are you giving them an added incentive? And they said, well, no, that's not our intent. And we don't mean that at all. And I said, well, this isn't defined very well. Fast forward, bill passes both chambers. By the way, you guys were in control of both chambers. And you also had the governor. It became law. And in my district, there was a company called Waterloo Industries. They actually were in a depressed area. They packed up, moved into an enterprise zone, and received incentives. And it was challenged. The Attorney General's office went and said, no, that was the intent of the legislature. It was okay to do that. It was fine. That isn't what the discussion was in committee. That's what attorneys do. They look at the words, and I don't think it makes a lot of difference here of what you're saying unless you define it. And Senator Zahn, you didn't define it. You just said, well, it isn't your intent. It's up to the people of Iowa to decide. Well, that's right. They will be the people to decide. But do they understand, and will they understand what strict scrutiny means? I don't think so, because it's too complicated to explain in a 30-second ad. And that's what's going to happen. So, if you know what it is and what your intent is, then let us know, because I'm deeply concerned. As a union counselor and work with families that were broken up through alcoholism and drugs, working at John Deere as a UAW guy, I ran into families where the husband had mental illness problems because of post-traumatic stress in Vietnam. And they were abusing their wives. That's the kind of individual that shouldn't have a weapon. And under current law, we have the ability to stop that from happening. And across this country, there's plenty of deaths that occur because of men who flip out. Mental illness. Now, there are plenty of people in Iowa that are looking at the terminology strict scrutiny and thinking that your intent is that every person has a right to a weapon no matter what. That's what I think it means. Every person. We don't need background checks. We aren't going to check to see if there's a record on somebody. You can just buy a weapon anywhere. That's what I believe it means. I haven't heard anybody say any different. And maybe we ought to put it in writing so when the attorneys look at this and try to figure out just what the heck we mean when we talk about this, that they'll know that it wasn't our intent. It's not our intent to stop people or to keep people, to allow people with mental illness to have weapons or to allow people that are convicted felons to have weapons. What we do here matters. And I think you're just throwing a jump ball up in the air to get my fellow gun owners worked up about something that makes them believe that this Democrat sitting in this seat don't care about their inalienable rights to have a weapon, which I do, because I own more than most. I don't hunt, but I enjoy going to the range and utilizing them because I believe in my right of freedom and I believe in protecting myself. But I also believe that there are people that shouldn't have weapons and they shouldn't have a right to them. And that's what this debate's about. And this is where I think you're wrong, because you haven't really clarified what you mean. And I think you better. Thank you, Mr. President.